General Hospital will reveal beneath the seemingly peaceful facade of the grand estate, an ominous tension simmered beneath the surface, threatening to explode at any moment. The night carried an eerie stillness, yet an unshakable sense of foreboding settled over the house. Willow stepped inside, unaware that she was about to be pulled into a cruel and irreversible reality. A strange unease crept up her spine, making the air feel heavier around her. Something was wrong. The dim glow spilling from Drew's study sent her pulse racing, an inexplicable dread curling inside her chest. As she moved cautiously down the hallway, her steps softened against the cold floor, her breath shallow and controlled. The closer she got, the more she sensed that something was terribly amiss. Peering through the slightly ajar door, her gaze locked onto the figure hunched over the open safe. A sharp intake of breath froze in her throat as recognition set in. It was Nina, her mother, her hands trembling slightly as she keyed in the final digits of the safe's combination. The metallic clicks echoed in the quiet room, and then, with a slow creak, the heavy door swung open. Time seemed to slow. Willow stood motionless, her body rigid with shock as she watched Nina's frantic hands sift through the neatly arranged documents. There was no hesitation in her mother's movements, only a desperate urgency, as if she knew exactly what she was looking for. The golden light from the desk lamp cast an unsettling glow over the scene, illuminating the tension carved into Nina's expression. The reality of the situation crashed down like a weight on Willow's chest. This wasn't a mistake, nor a moment of impulse. It was calculated, premeditated. A sickening realization dawned. Nina wasn't just searching through Drew's belongings, she was attempting to uncover something incriminating, something that could be used against him. The intent was undeniable. Her mother was betraying Drew. And yet, beneath the layers of deceit, there was another truth that unsettled Willow even more. Nina wasn't just looking for evidence. She was trying to take control of something far greater than just a secret. A surge of conflicting emotions twisted within Willow, anger battling with disbelief. Her mind raced through the possibilities, the implications of what she had just witnessed. The woman who had fought to be part of her life, the mother she had only just begun to accept, was standing before her as an intruder in the home of the man she had come to trust. Her fingers clenched involuntarily, nails digging into her palms as the weight of the moment settled over her. She wanted to look away, to pretend she had never seen this, but it was impossible. The scene was burned into her mind, the truth now an irreversible stain on the fragile bond she and Nina had attempted to build. The woman before her was not the mother she had wished for, but a liar, a schemer, and perhaps something far worse. A quiet fury burned beneath Willow's skin. This betrayal was more than just a violation of trust. It was a warning. And in that moment, she made a decision that would change everything. Nina had made her choice, and now, Willow would make hers. Willow stood frozen in place as the heavy door of the safe swung open, revealing a collection of mysterious documents neatly stacked inside. The dim glow from the overhead lamp cast long shadows over the room, making the scene feel even more surreal. Nina moved swiftly, her fingers skimming through the papers with a sense of urgency, her eyes scanning for something specific. The tension in her posture betrayed the weight of her actions. She was not merely browsing, she was searching, determined to uncover something incriminating. Before she could retrieve anything, a sharp, almost chilling presence filled the air. A silent force that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. It was the unrelenting weight of being watched. A suffocating stillness stretched between them before Nina turned, her breath catching in her throat as she locked eyes with Willow. The look in her daughter's gaze was cold, unwavering, filled with an emotion Nina could not decipher. Shock flickered across Nina's face, but it was quickly replaced by something else, fear. She had been caught in the act, and there was no escape. The realization hit her with brutal force, there was no way to talk her way out of this. The truth, no matter how damning, was the only option left. Her fingers clenched around the papers for a moment before she slowly released them, allowing them to settle back into the safe. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to meet Willow's gaze, though her heart pounded violently in her chest. She could see it now, Willow's expression was not one of mere suspicion, but accusation. The weight of betrayal hung thick in the air between them. For a fleeting moment, Nina considered lying, spinning a story to soften the edges of the truth. But the cold reality of her situation crushed any hope of deception. Willow had seen too much. A deep breath rattled through Nina's chest as she braced herself. She had no choice but to tell the truth. Not just about what she was doing here tonight, but everything, the secrets Drew had kept, the dangerous leverage hidden within these papers, and most importantly, the one truth that would shatter the fragile trust between them. Nina had been involved with Drew in a way that went beyond mere secrecy. Their entanglement was deeper, more personal, more damning than Willow could have ever imagined. And now, with the past catching up to them, Nina had taken it upon herself to expose Drew before he could destroy everything. But as she prepared to confess, a sickening realization settled over her. Willow was not looking at her with anger or disappointment alone, there was something else in her eyes, something far more unsettling. A quiet, calculating resolve. Nina had expected outrage. She had expected accusations. But she had not expected this. Willow was not just reacting. She was deciding. And whatever choice she made in this moment would determine both of their fates. But contrary to Nina's expectations, Willow did not react with outrage toward Drew. Instead, each word that spilled from Nina's lips cut into her like a sharp, unforgiving blade. A slow, suffocating realization settled over her like a weight she could not shake. This wasn't just about uncovering a hidden truth, this was a deliberate act of sabotage. Nina wasn't merely exposing Drew, she was trying to destroy him. And for what? To regain control. To manipulate her into seeing Drew as the villain. A torrent of emotions surged through Willow, a storm of disbelief, betrayal, and something far darker, rage. In that instant, memories crashed over her like relentless waves, each one reinforcing the truth she had been too blind to see before. She remembered the times Drew had shielded her, stood by her side when she felt lost, and defended her even when he had no reason to. She recalled the quiet reassurances, the unwavering support, the way he had protected her in ways Nina never had. Every moment painted a clear contrast between them, Drew, who had offered her stability, and Nina, who had only ever brought chaos into her life. A bitter heat crawled up Willow's spine, tightening in her chest as she stared at the woman who was supposed to be her mother. This wasn't love. This wasn't concern. Nina had never been the selfless, devoted mother she pretended to be. She was a disruptor, a force of destruction that always managed to tear things apart under the guise of righteousness. And now, she had the audacity to stand here, in Drew's home, prying into his private life, spinning her twisted narrative as if she were the victim. The realization was like poison seeping into Willow's veins. Nina wasn't here because she cared. She wasn't trying to protect her daughter. She was only trying to serve her own interests, to manipulate Willow into turning against Drew, to push her into yet another conflict she had no desire to fight. A surge of fury built inside her, a raw, unrelenting force that burned away any lingering sentimentality she might have held. Nina had already taken so much from her, disrupted so many parts of her life. But this time, Willow would not let her. She would not allow herself to be a pawn in her mother's endless game. With each passing second, the distance between them grew, not physically, but emotionally, irreversibly. Whatever thread of connection had been left between them had finally snapped, and in its place was something colder, something unyielding. Willow no longer saw Nina as a mother. She saw her for what she truly was, an enemy. And enemies had to be dealt with. Without hesitation, Willow turned on her heel and walked away, but not to leave. Every step she took was deliberate, her mind racing with a singular, unwavering purpose. The air around her felt thick, heavy with the weight of the truth she had just uncovered. The sharp sting of betrayal coursed through her veins, but it was not a wound that weakened her. It was fuel. It ignited something cold and resolute within her, something that demanded action. She moved swiftly through the dimly lit hallway, her bare feet making no sound against the polished floors. The walls, the familiar surroundings, the very foundation of her life had shifted in an instant. Nothing would ever be the same again. Every thought, every memory of her mother unraveled into something dark and irredeemable. Reaching the bedroom door, she pushed it open without hesitation. The room was cloaked in shadows, the rhythmic sound of Drew's breathing the only indication of life. She stepped closer, her pulse steady, her mind clearer than it had ever been. Leaning down, she placed her lips close to his ear, her breath barely stirring the air between them. In that moment, she released the truth that would change everything. Drew's body tensed beneath the sheets as her words sank in, the gravity of her revelation snapping him into full awareness. His eyes opened, sharp and calculating, the remnants of sleep vanishing instantly. The room was still, yet charged with something almost electric. His mind worked quickly, dissecting the implications, the consequences, the danger. A new kind of understanding passed between them in that silence. He did not need to question her. He did not need to ask for further clarification. The look in Willow's eyes told him everything. The innocence that had once softened her gaze was gone, replaced by something unwavering, something ruthless. There was no hesitation, no room for doubt. She had chosen her side. Drew exhaled slowly, his expression unreadable, yet beneath the surface, something lethal stirred. He knew Nina. He knew her ambition, her persistence, her inability to let go once she set her sights on something. If she had dared to cross this line, to betray him so openly, it meant she had already accepted the risks. And now, she would have to face the consequences. Willow did not flinch. Her hands remained steady, her breath even. She had made her decision, and she would not waver. There was no room for sentimentality, no lingering attachment to the woman who had called herself her mother. Nina had never been her protector, had never truly loved her the way a mother should. She had only ever wanted control. But Willow would not be controlled. Not anymore. She stood there in the silence, feeling the shift between them, the unspoken agreement that had now bound her fate to Drew's. The man she trusted. The man she had chosen. And in choosing him, she had sealed her mother's fate. No one knew exactly what had transpired in the dead of night, but by morning, the city buzzed with a chilling revelation: Nina was dead. The news spread like wildfire, whispers turning into frantic speculation as people tried to piece together the horrifying truth. The police arrived at her apartment before dawn, responding to a distress call from a neighbor who had reported unsettling noises, only to discover a scene that reeked of violence and finality. The air inside was thick with the remnants of a struggle, overturned furniture, shattered glass, and the unmistakable signs of desperation. Nina's body lay motionless on the cold floor, her once vibrant presence now reduced to a lifeless shell. Bruises marred her arms, dark fingerprints pressed into her skin as if she had fought to free herself from an unseen assailant. A deep gash at her temple told a story of impact, of a final, fatal blow. Her fingers, stiff and curled, seemed to claw at nothing, as though in her last moments she had reached for something, or someone, that was no longer within her grasp. There were no signs of forced entry, no immediate evidence pointing to an intruder. It was as if death had found her from within the very shadows of her own life. The investigation began swiftly, officers moving in calculated precision, sifting through her personal belongings, retracing her last steps. Questions arose almost immediately. Who had been with her that night? Had she been expecting someone? The authorities considered every possibility: an enemy, an old grudge, a lover turned vengeful, but there was one thing they all agreed upon: Nina hadn't gone down without a fight. As the sun climbed higher, the weight of the tragedy began pressing down on those who had once been closest to her. Drew appeared later that morning, his expression carved from stone, an unreadable mask of indifference. His movements were calculated, his presence heavy with something unspoken. He answered questions without hesitation, his words precise, never faltering. He provided an alibi, one that placed him miles away from Nina's apartment during the estimated time of death. There was no evidence, no reason to suspect him, at least not yet. Willow stood beside him, her demeanor the very embodiment of quiet sorrow. She was calm, composed, the perfect picture of innocence. There were no traces of guilt in her features, no trembling hands, no uneven breaths. She carried herself as she always had, gentle, reserved, seemingly fragile. To those around her, she was still the delicate woman who had suffered so much, who had lost her mother in a senseless act of violence. But beneath the surface, something far more insidious lurked. Behind the veil of her tranquil exterior, deep within her silent gaze, the truth lay buried. She had known. She had been part of it. And yet, she showed no remorse. She had chosen her side, forsaking the woman who had given her life in favor of the man she had sworn to protect. Nina had underestimated her, had failed to see that the daughter she once tried to manipulate had outgrown her illusions. In the end, Willow had been the one to make the final, irreversible decision. And now, nothing could stop her. The world would go on believing in the image she carefully curated, the facade she had perfected. No one would ever suspect her, because the truth was too inconceivable, too buried beneath layers of deception. Nina was gone. Drew was safe. And Willow had never felt more in control.